manage it, but as far as like what is the fluctuation you've seen as far as like say, a student might be scoring like a particular score leading up to the test, and then what is your experiences as far as like score fluctuation on the actual test day? Like what's the correlation there, or like what have you seen?
That's a good question. Yeah. First off, I just want to ask everyone in general, anyone here experienced score fluctuations in general on practice tests, performance?
Yeah.
See everyone nodding? Yeah, it's a real thing. So score fluctuations are totally normal. And then as far as practice tests versus actual test day performance, if you perform well under pressure, you might do better. If nerves impact you, you might do worse. The biggest reason I see for test day score drops relative to practice tests is if your practice tests are not maximally realistic. You want to make sure that you are properly simulating test day conditions, especially being really strict with timing. And now with the digital LSAT, making sure that you are proficient with the digital LSAT format as opposed to the paper and pencil format. Those are a couple of things to keep in mind. As far as numbers though, I mean, I've heard and seen it all. I've seen people do 5 points better than on their practice. I've seen people do 5 to 7 points worse and been shocked by it. Typically, if someone does 5 to 7 points worse, it's because of a combination of anxiety and nerves, along with the practice test scores being artificially inflated because the person was a little bit too generous with themselves on their practice tests. So make sure that you're simulating properly, you're being strict with yourself, especially with the timing, and that you're also used to the digital LSAT format, and that you're doing whatever you can to deal with nerves and anxiety if that's an issue. Ariel wrote a few comments in the chat here around quality over quantity. Even if the questions change in terms of style, the approach overall wouldn't change. Now, Ariel, could you share more on your review experience doing fewer versus more, or how in depth you go?
Yes, definitely. So I think when I first started out, way back in September, I was trying to hit I guess a quota. I think going by the study plan that I was on at that time, it was 2 months. So I was trying to do 15 or 20, for example, like weekend questions per day, but I found that to be impossible. And so I found that if I could do fewer of them, fewer questions, and still do my like deep review. Granted, my review back then was much sloppier than it is now. So now it takes even more time. And I definitely find that the review is more important than just kind of running through, 20 or 30 questions. Because if you're not adjusting and like kind of reflecting on where your approach isn't the best, it just seems like a waste of time at the end of the day. So personally, now what I do is I set a much like smaller quota, maybe get through 5 to 10 questions, depending on the day, like Monday to Friday, maybe 5 questions plus review. And if that takes 2 hours, it takes 2 hours. If it takes 30 minutes, then that's it. I'm done for the day. Or if I'm feeling up to doing a little bit more, I can go on from there. But I find that less is more, especially done with LR and especially logic games. Once you've seen maybe 15 questions for like a specific LR question type, you've almost seen them all, in my opinion. Granted, if you have an approach that actually works, like I was saying, it won't matter so much what the LSAT writer throws at you. You'll still be able to approach the question and hopefully get to the right answer. So that's kind of how my review has evolved over time. And I find that setting a much smaller goal per day has helped just with my understanding, and then also avoiding burnout, which I did experience a few months back, and I don't recommend that for anybody, especially those taking April or even June and much, much later than that. So that's kind of my review process in a nutshell.